Hello and welcome to my review of the Necron Lychguard, or Lychguard, however you want to call them. Typically this set of 5 will cost you £20.50. Alternatively, you can find them in the brand new Warhammer 40,000 expansion set called Forgebane. So you can build them as these, which are the Lychguard, or you can build them as the Triarch Praetorians, which are the ones with the staffs. I've built them as the Lychguard because I think it's pretty cool that robots would have shields. The shields give quite a good bonus to their save, which I'll talk about later on towards the end of the video. So these are the poses I've made. They're quite straightforward and easy to put together. Definitely definitely easier than the wraiths. The only sort of tricky parts would just be the torso to the legs, really, because they don't have any kind of flesh, as it were. It's just metal, like a metal exoskeleton kind of thing, a bit like Terminator. They do look like Terminators, they really do. Anyway, the spine, where the whole of the chest and the head and the arms connect to, it's got quite a small surface area. It doesn't completely plug in like the arms do. So that's the only bit you might have an issue with. You might have an issue with holding the shields in place because they are quite heavy, you know, in plastic terms. So keeping that pose while the plastic glue is drying. But yeah, I found them quite straightforward other than those little points. Definitely quicker to build than the wraiths. You can have at these, do them in like an hour or two at the most. The poses I've gone for, I say he's a sergeant. There isn't really a sergeant kind of thing going on, but he's just got like an extra ball on top of his head. So if that means anything. They're kind of walking forward. The poses are quite flexible, as flexible as, say, you know, your Space Marines, not your Primaris, but your normal Space Marines, in that the legs go together one way. You glue the legs onto the base, and then you've pretty much got free reign. You know, the arms can be rotated around and moved. The swords sort of can, depending on where that forearm and wrist is pointing. You know, the shields, you can change the angle of how the shield is parallel to the forearm, and then the actual shoulder joint itself. The heads, even, you can move them pretty much almost any way you want. I do find it a bit odd that the heads are sort of in their armour, like within the collar, but hey, there we go. So yeah, a lot. And then on top of moving all the arms and the head and things, you can move it however which way you want on that spindly spine. It's one of the trade-offs of that small surface area, and that you can move it in loads of different positions. So that's great if you're planning on buying these and having the Praetorians, or having another box of these. You're going to go for some excellent poses. Yeah, the legs are going to look very similar between them all, but you know, there's no reason why you have to put that kind of loin sort of armour thing on there if you don't want to. So that's a little bit of a you know, change in the way they look. I like their kind of spines. I just don't care. They've got their spines on the outside. Look, you know, probably added armour, but yeah. So great customisation in this kit. Quite cheap price too, £20. You know, considering you can make 2 different squads with these. This guy is just kind of peeping behind his shield. You know, they're quite big shields too. I'll show you some size comparisons after the spare parts. But these shields, you know, make storm shields look like little deflecting shields. They really do. This guy, you get one guy in the whole pack that for some reason wants to carry his sword like that. Strange, but there we go. And then this guy is quite a good pose. He's just about to take a swipe. He's got a shield out, so he's open to an attack there. I'm not quite sure how the speed of these in melee, but there you go. And then this guy finally, he's just got a shield up a little bit, but he's just walking forward. So there you go. I think they look pretty cool, and the Praetorians look cool too, because they've actually got different carapaces, different little shield things as well. Lots of customization in this kit. I'm really chuffed with it. So let's have a look at the spare parts. Move these out of the way. And we'll do some size comparisons. So here are all the spare parts. Oh my word. Yeah, let's do some reanimation protocol saving dice rolls for these, because crikey, you've got an awful lot. So you've got these blades. I think this actually goes on to the haft, so it goes onto it something like that, and that's like a double-handed kind of staff. And then you've got these kind of little shield things as well. You've got different spines, look, you've got different heads for the, look, they've got balls in them as well, so they must be important. And then you've got these, look at this different carapace, look, or armour. I'm assuming the head goes in there. So you're using the same chest pieces, but you're using these different kind of bigger armour pieces, and I think that goes on, I want to say something like that. Yeah, anyway, it sort of goes on something like that. And then you've got like a little hand outstretched. So there's no reason why you can't just use this hand on one of these instead of the shield, and then have the shield on the back, or, you know, if you wanted to go down that route maybe. Then you've got this as well, like a staff thing. So yeah, fair amount of spare parts there. Easily be able to bunch these up and spray them silver and have it like a, you know, reanimation protocol kind of, you know, pile of Necrons. So yeah, a lot of spare parts there. Don't know how useful they'll be, but that's great. So size comparison wise then, let's compare them to Wraiths, which are pretty big. Here is a little spidery Wraith here, and Wraiths are quite big. This is probably the shortest one I've got in the set. So they're just sort of standard kind of size. Here's the Cryptek. So Cryptek does sort of dwarf over them, but that's pretty cool though, because he's, you know, hovering about, giving them orders and things, helping to buff them. Next to Space Marines, they do dwarf a Space Marine now. Look at this. Primaris are, oh, it's difficult to sort of with this angle, but yeah, as you can see there, they are a tiny bit taller than a Primaris, just a tiny bit, if you can see that. But a normal Space Marine, wow, look at the size difference. They're a foot or more taller than a normal Space Marine, which sort of doesn't make sense, because they're that much bigger than a normal Space Marine, but they're just a little bit bigger than a Primaris. So there you go. Hope that helps. Bigger than your Space Marines. Got the bigger 32mm bases as well. So yeah, in combat with Space Marines, they are going to make them look quite small. Now this is my part of the review where I will go through all of the 8th edition rules for the Lychguard. You'll find them in your Necron Codex under the Elites section. Alternatively, the rules can be found in the Forgebane expansion book that you get with the set. Their power points cost is an 8, and their match play points cost is 19 points per model, which isn't too bad, but then you've got to pay for their weapons too, which is a hyperphase sword and a dispersion shield. They normally come with a war scythe anyway, so you can give them a war scythe or replace them with the hyperphase swords and dispersion shields, which mine are equipped with, and that's an additional 18 points per model. So it's almost as much points for the war gear as they themselves cost. They cost 19 points and the war gear is 18 points. So that means that they are 37 points per model. So quite pricey, 37 points per model. They're 1 point less than a standard Wraith. So what do you get for these points? Let's go through the unit composition. They contain 5 Lychguard, and they can include up to an additional 5 for a power rating of +8. The unit profile is a movement of 5 inches, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 5, toughness 5, 2 wounds each, 2 attacks each, leadership 10, and a save of 3+. So this movement 5 inches is becoming quite common among a lot of the Necron units, and so is the leadership of 10, and some might say the save of 3+ too. So the weapons. The standard weapon that they can have is the War Scythe, which will only cost you 11 points instead of the 18 for the sword and the shield. I'll just touch upon the War Scythe. It's a melee weapon. Strength is +2, so that's strength 7, AP -4, and a damage of 2. So they're your heavy hitters, the ones with the War Scythes, going up against high toughness units, low save, high save, how does that work? Models with high armour, so that's low saving throw, so like 2+ or more. That's the way I want to word it. You know, they've got 2 wounds each with toughness of 5. They've got their reanimation protocols, so that they'll eventually get there. But I would personally put them in some kind of transport to get them there sooner, to make use of that melee only weapon, because they haven't got anything that they can fire. So they're a bit vulnerable. You know, you're not missing out on any shooting with them if you stick them in a transport. And if you're against a fast army, you're going to sort of be trying to play catch up, trying to assault them all the time. So the other weapon loadout you can go for is the Hyperphase Sword and the Dispersion Shield. Now the sword is the strength of the user, which is 5, so it's still pretty good. AP is -3 and damage 1. So although you're missing out on the strength, and you're missing out on the AP, and you're missing out on the damage, it's still quite a decent little sword, a bit like a power sword really. But what you are then gaining is the Dispersion Shield. Doesn't give you any more attacks, wish it did, but it gives you a 4+ invulnerable save. And it's not just in melee or anything like that, it is a fully fledged 4+ invulnerable, so 3+ normal, 4+ invulnerable. If they don't have a transport, that's going to give them more resilience to shooting attacks, so that they can get into close combat, and they're definitely going to survive more, you know, from high strength weaponry than just the Lychguard with the War Scythes. So abilities, I've already said that if you give them Dispersion Shields, you get the Dispersion Shield ability, which is the 4+ invulnerable. They also have reanimation protocols, which if you're following the channel and you're following all these videos, I will have mentioned in a previous video that you roll a d6 for each slain model from the unit at the beginning of your turn, and on a 5+, the model's reanimation protocols activate it and it's returned to the unit, otherwise they remain inactive. But you can keep rolling again at the start of the subsequent turns. So basically you're just bringing back your units to life on a 5+. And if you're using the Cryptek, which is within 3 inches of them, then you get to add 1 to the rolls. So that becomes a 4+. So 50-50 chance of them coming back, just because the Cryptek is within 3 inches of them. Pretty good. That's where I'd have them, as kind of like a bodyguard to the Cryptek, because he's quite weak firing, quite weak shooting. He needs something in combat at least to keep him in the game. They also have Guardian Protocols, which links me to Guardian Protocols, which is their final ability, where you roll a d6 each time a friendly dynasty character loses a wound. Crypteks are dynasty characters, so roll a d6 each time the character loses a wound, whilst they are within 3 inches of the unit, and on a 2+, this unit can intercept the hit. The character does not lose a wound, but this unit suffers a mortal wound. So I don't know whether you want to do that. It's quite a big sort of trade-off. They can jump, I say jump, they're sort of walking hunks of metal, aren't they? But I say jump, they can move into place and kind of take the hit for the Cryptek, but the unit suffers a mortal wound. So it depends. It's a small price to pay if you want to keep your character surviving. But obviously if it suffers a mortal wound and it dies, then you may well get the benefit of reanimation protocols the next round and bring it back to life anyway. So, you know, it's a good trade-off, and I think that illustrates the great synergy between these two units, the Lychguard and the Cryptek. So they work quite well together and in harmony. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the Lychguard. I think they're a great unit, whether you give them war scythes or hyperphase swords. They're going to do a fair bit of damage. They don't have the best number of attacks, and they don't have any shooting ability, but you give them those shields and you've got a unit that has toughness 5, 2 wounds, save 3+, and an invulnerable 4+ save. They can come back to life every turn as normal, or if you give them war scythes, then they're going to be going against Terminators and other sort of heavy armed and armoured elite choices from other armies. So they're quite a strong, decent damage output unit, just with the weakness of getting into range and slogging it across the battlefield, and needing a transport and no ranged attacks. So what do you guys think of the Lychguard, or do you have them all as with war scythes? Please do put it in your comments below. It'd be great to hear from you fellow Necron players. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. All hail the machine.